How's it going, everyone? Welcome to this week's Q&A. So like any other week, if you want a chance to win your questions being answered, make sure you drop a comment down below with your question, and I'll do my best to get to each and every question, either in a video just like this one, or in the question itself that you ask, or make a full dedicated video if need be. So I have obviously a lot of videos I'm trying to catch up and work on, but for now, we'll continue with these Q&As. And I'm going to try to get our regular Wednesday videos going here, 7 p.m. Eastern time, or whatever that applies to you, whatever the part of the world you may be in. So with that being said, let's go ahead and get started with the first question of the weekend. It is, what are my thoughts on the 2025 Acura RDX? This question was specific to the A spec, but we'll address it as a vehicle as a whole. And I think it's a great vehicle. Honestly, the 2.0T is a pretty reliable, engine powertrain and transmission setup. I do have a few long-term concerns with it, and something that kind of we've been seeing trended up lately. So one of them being head gasket issues. So yes, the 1.5T is a lot more susceptible to failing head gaskets, although the 2.0 turbo is not immune to failures. The big key difference is here that they have failures way later on in the engine life itself, meaning that typically most of them fail at 100,000+ miles. A lot of 1.5Ts, not all of them, but a lot of 1.5Ts, specifically more so in the Accord, we see them usually between 70,000 80,000 miles. That's the typical range, although we've seen as early as like 30,000 miles and as late as 150+. So take that with whatever you want to take it with, but that's just what we see, what I see at our dealership, and what I see from talking to various techs across the country, dealerships, both on the Honda and Acura side. Also, the 2.0T seems to be a lot more susceptible to the heads cracking, typically right around the turbo turbo area where the turbo bolts up right on the head, and it'll spray coolant all over the valve cover. And people often think it's like a radiator leak, but in fact, it's actually the cylinder head that cracked. And at that point, obviously, you need a new cylinder head, and that's just from poor casting. I found one on a 1.5T. It was actually CRV. And but most of them do seem to be on a 2.0 turbo side of things. So that's the only power plant offered in the RDX. I do love it as a whole. Obviously, it's a little bit outdated at this point. It's a lot of years in its cycle, so we probably will be expecting something new, another generation following this one. It is a big seller for Acura, so let's see what happens here. And last but not least, this issue is for the all-wheel drive trim models. So they have the same thing as the TLX Type S that we're seeing, and this issue is for the RDX, TLX base and Type S, and the MDX Type S, because it comes with the 10-speed. So, and the where the transmission and the transfer case meet are the gears there and the splines there are stripping. So that's obviously a big cause for concern, especially after these vehicles are out of warranty. That is a huge bill to take on after these cars are out of warranty. And it's a lot bigger and a bigger expense than a head gasket, let's say. So something you have to consider now before anybody comes out and saying it's not happening. Absolutely it is. I have 3 reported failures on RDXs, and they use the same exact part number. I have a full video on this, the same exact part number as the TLX, both base and a Type S models or trims. For the transfer case. The issue is not actually on a transfer case, it's more on the transmission side, on the female side that engages on the transfer case. It just kills the transfer case at the same time and kills your all-wheel drive system. Now, it doesn't seem to affect the vehicle at all with any warnings or anything like that, but when you get on it, typically in the lower gears, it'll spin the front tires, the traction control light will, go crazy and whatnot. So again, that's just for the 4-wheel drive models. If you have just a 2-wheel drive, then it's not an issue for you, but definitely something to be concerned with, especially at these vehicles' age. I do love them as a whole. I think it's a better powertrain versus the CRV personally. Obviously, the SH all-wheel drive issue is big, seems to be random. I haven't come across any particular pattern. Obviously, on the TLX Type S and MDX Type S side, those cars are more powerful. They're, also on a heavier side. So that's going to put more stress on the drivetrain. That's why we're seeing more failures on also the MDX and the TLX Type S, people modify them, right? So with more power comes more stress on that drivetrain once again. So why we're seeing more failures on that side, or maybe the RDX owners just aren't reporting it as much. It's really hard to say, but overall, I do like the car. No car comes without any issues. So if you do purchase one of those vehicles, get extended warranty, like I always preach on any new car, doesn't matter what brand it is. So hopefully that answers the question for you. All right, so this next question is, and I actually plan on making a video for this real soon on this topic for this vehicle. So what is the most reliable vehicle you could purchase from Honda today? And that, without a doubt, is going to be the HR-V, and that's for a couple of different reasons, right? So it's the only vehicle really left with port injection. So that's obviously a big deal right there. Comes with the K20 Z5, I believe is the engine code. So real simple engine before all this direct injection turbo nonsense. So naturally aspirated, direct injection, comes with less bells and whistles than all the other models. It is a lower trim or base model, entry-level type of SUV here, so that's why it's going to have less problems, right? It also is probably one of the better ones on fuel economy, and one of the ones that we see less in a shop for silly things. It also doesn't require too much maintenance, so there's no time belt, so that's obviously a big one. There's less cylinders. We don't see direct fuel injectors failing because they're not direct injectors. So we're seeing injectors failing basically on every other model. So we're talking about the J series, not the new ones, but the previous ones. The new ones are still a little bit too new. So we got the J series that are Passport, Pilot, Ridgeline, Odyssey, stuff like that. We're also seeing injector failures on the Civic 1.5T, Accord 1.5T, CR-V 1.5T. We're seeing injector failures on a 2.0T, so on a hybrid. Actually, a new bulletin just came out for that. I plan on covering that at some point as well. So if you want a great, reliable vehicle from Honda that's not going to cost you too much in maintenance, and it's not going to cost you that much and fuel consumption and stuff like that, I think the HR-V is a perfect vehicle. My only gripe with it, and I talk about this every time, is that it's underpowered. But you know what? If you're looking for a reliable vehicle, it's something to consider versus all the other ones that are going to cost you, without a doubt, more money, both in maintenance and repairs down the road. So hopefully that answers this question. All right, so the next question is idle stop, unavailable message being displayed on the vehicle. The vehicle is just simply not going to idle stop, and this person is actually canceling it out by touching the button, which all these vehicles do have. But he's concerned and obviously annoyed that the message is coming on and he has to turn it off every time. So typically this happens for a couple of different reasons. Most common in most situations why it doesn't stop, or sometimes it stops and doesn't restart, which is even a bigger concern because you come to a panic, obviously, when you expect the engine to restart and it doesn't. So, and that's typically because the battery is low. Now, there's a bulletin on the Pilots, Passports, and Odysseys, I believe, for this. And then actually, when we do the update, it makes it harder or more aggressive for it not to go into idle stop mode. Which a lot of people afterwards complain about. So we usually tell them, listen, we're going to do this, but it's not going to idle stop mode more often. And the whole system is just silly. And there's, again, talks of this being eliminated in the future. So we will see what happens there, what the government and all the politicians want to do there. That's obviously out of our control. But in the meantime, if you wanted to eliminate this idle stopper, I'll have the link in the description section down below. Again, I think it's not needed in any vehicle in any way, shape, or form. And if you want to eliminate that, it's seamless. It's a plug-and-play kit, idle stopper, and it works really well on basically every vehicle I've ever installed it on. So if you want to go ahead and do that in the meantime, feel free to do so. If anyone local here wants me to install it for them on whatever vehicle they have, they cover basically any Honda, just purchase it. I'll go ahead and install it for you and make a video on that. And that'll, obviously be different for different cars, but you'll get the general idea. I'm sure there's also plenty of YouTube videos on this as well. So hopefully that answers this question for you. All right, so the next question is valve adjustment. Is it actually needed? And what is a good service interval for a valve adjustment? This question, I believe, was in particular to or specific to a 17 MDX, but this will apply basically to any vehicle. So valve adjustments come because at some point with normal usage, the valves typically either get tighter or looser than the manufacturer specifications. On Honda, typically what we see is it get tighter, typically on the exhaust side of things. Now, a lot of people are under the impression that valves get looser, and typically they actually get tighter. Now, doesn't mean that some won't get loose, but typically they will get tighter. So we go in there and we adjust the valves into spec. And typically, if a valve is on a loose side, I'll leave it that. A loose valve is a happy valve, meaning that a valve that's too tight, which is the bigger issue here, can actually cause bigger issues like misfires and even burn up valves and stuff like that. So a good recommendation is about 105,000 miles or so. Now, if you have one of these V6s that at that mileage, you're talking spark plugs, all the fluids and time belt package, which is a big chunk of money to spend all one shot, I would say valve adjustment is at the very last of the priority list. So I would do the time belt. You do not want that snapping. Now, time belt, a lot of people say even at 100,000, it'll be fine. And that's true. In most cases, it will not snap right around 100,000. I've seen these cars well into the 150,000s on original time belt. But is that something you want to play with? That's only something you could decide with. So what I would do at that mileage is time belt, fluids, and then valve adjustment, spark plugs, something in that order. Valve adjustment again being at the end, unless if you're having some sort of misfire issues, then you want to prioritize that before it becomes a bigger issue. But right around 105,000 miles. Now, let's say you don't do it, then chances are you're going to be okay. Very rarely do we run across tight valves anymore. Back when I started in the late 2000s, we had tons of engines early on needing valve adjustments. Kind of seems like Honda corrected that and fixed whatever issue was going on there. Now, the new engines, so the new engine in the Pilot and the Passport, so 23 and up Pilot, 26 and up Passport, MDX Type S, TLX Type S, they all use the same design head. Those no longer have adjustable rockers, so that's something that we no longer have to go ahead and adjust, and you no longer have to go ahead and spend your money on. So that's something nice to look for into the future. Now, the opposite of that argument is the time belt package is going to cost you more money because it's going to be more labor intensive due to it needing special tools and having 4 cams instead of 2. So, and not everybody's going to be able to do this. In the beginning, it's going to be a dealer-only maintenance item. At some point, obviously, the third-party shops will have all the knowledge and the tools and the guidance to get this done. But regardless, it's going to cost you more money for that dual overhead cam setup versus this single overhead cam found in the older vehicles. So hopefully that answers the question for you. And, just try to, prioritize where you need to. Again, the valve adjustment will probably be at the bottom of the list versus the time belt and the fluids. All right, and last but not least, question of the week. And once again, if you want a chance to win question being answered, make sure you drop a comment down below. So the question is, this person purchased a Civic Type R 2017, I believe it was, and initially had a condenser issue, which is a huge issue along mostly Accords and the Civics, although we do see them on CRVs. I actually did one on a Clarity this week, which was my first one ever. But, so we have issues with condensers, compressors, and evaporators. Now, here on the East Coast, after talking to a couple people, we do not see most of them. Oftentimes when we do have issues, it's the condenser and the compressor seal leaking. So we're not going to go ahead and take apart the blower motor when we see 2 obvious leaks. We're going to address those first. In the event that it comes back, then obviously we'll dig deeper. Also, the condenser and the compressor seal have a warranty extension and the evaporator does not. So by the time these cars are rolling in the shop, they're out of normal warranty and sometimes don't have extended warranty. So obviously we're going to do, and most customers are aware that there is a service bulletin, and we'll do a condenser and or the compressor shaft seal if needed. So on the West Coast side of things, for some reason, it seems to be a lot more common for whatever reason. I haven't picked up a rhyme or reason or anything like that or a common link, but they seem to be doing a lot of them more, and a lot of them are oftentimes on Civics. Now, the evaporator, the chances of that leaking are very slim. Obviously, they're not going to be susceptible to impacts from like the condenser will be. And I did a condenser on a 07 Accord just last week, and then back to back I did one on a 18 or 19 Civic, let's say, and the weight difference is pretty alarming. So meaning that the material that they're using nowadays is a lot thinner than the 07 Accord one. Now, the 07 Accord was missing all the little fins that you see, and that's obviously important, but that's not where the coolant flows through, the refrigerant, excuse me. The refrigerant actually flows through the vertical or the horizontal lines and the veins, as we call them. So as long as those are intact, it's good. Now, obviously, it's not going to cool as well because the cooling fins are gone, but it does its job. Now, the only reason I changed that one is because it actually had a leak at one of the seals at the dryer. And I said, well, if we're doing all this work, we got to take it out. it's missing half the fins. Let's just go ahead and replace the whole thing while we're in there. It just makes sense. Now, my point is that even with all that stuff missing, it was still probably double the weight than the newer Civic one. So again, meaning that Honda's just using inferior condensers here and just saving a ton of money. But now they're shooting themselves in the foot because they have to replace some of them. We've done 3 or 4 times. So I'd be a lot more concerned with the condenser and the shaft seal than the evaporator going once again. And evaporator, again, goes inside the car, so less susceptible to anything actually impacting it. So, but moving on from that, so if you have one of these vehicles, just be on notice that this is an issue. And if you're feeling like your AC is not cooling enough, then go ahead and bring it to your local Honda dealer. And chances are you are covered by one of these 2 service bulletins. So hopefully that answers the question for you, and I'll catch everyone on the next one.